Okay, I'm in. We have 18 participants today. Hi, I'm Lori Freeman with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. Here today to talk to you about waste tire amnesty, our waste tire grant program that we have going on this year. I also have Janet Arnold here with me. The purpose of this grant program is to assist solid waste management districts in cleaning up waste tires in their counties. We're going to today talk about the various application forms and answer any questions that you may have. The first form that we are going to talk about is the waste tire grant application form. Let's see if I can share my screen so you guys can see it. So here we go. Can everyone see the form? And I'm sorry, I know you guys are all muted, so I don't know why I asked that, but here we go. Janet Arnold is going to talk to you about the form and what needs to go into it.
Good afternoon, everyone. We thank you for taking time out of your day to join us to go over this waste tire grant program application, the whole program. Thank you for taking your time out of your day. And we hope that this information session will be helpful for you and that will answer any questions that you may have. So on the waste tire grant program application form, that is at State Form 57241, I do want to point out that in the top right-hand corner there, that has the IDEM mailing address and our phone contact information, and also has the waste tire grant, email address in case you need to send us an email. And that is also the email that you will use to submit your application and any forms that you have. So the first thing is we just ask that you list information regarding your organization name. We've had some people to ask just various different questions, how things are going, who's going to be doing what. So it's right now we're opening this up to the solid waste management district. So you would just put your solid waste management district name there, your address, the city, state, your website, and your federal ID number. And on this form, we do ask that you please include a primary contact person's name and phone number and email. And we do ask for a secondary person's name. Just in case something comes up, we need to ask questions. The holidays are coming up. So this is a time of the year where people will take time off and even into the beginning of the year. So if we have questions, we just want to make sure that we're able to reach out to somebody that can help to answer any questions that we may have regarding your application so that it does not delay any processing. So we would greatly appreciate that. The next thing that is listed on there underneath those contact information is the registered vendor with the state. So you could please include your information regarding the registered vendor and the project street address. So if it's not going to be, at the location of where your organization's listed, or you would put what that particular address is for the site that you would be actually performing your annual waste tire project day. So on here, the next box that we have for the type of applicant, it says check one. Like we said, for right now, We're just starting out with this, so we wanted to see how things go. Our intent was to start with the solid waste management districts with the thought that you guys would have experience with doing these types of projects. So that is the reason why you do see that there's two other boxes listed there, but we're just starting with the solid waste management districts right now.
With one caveat, if you are in a county that does not have a solid waste management district, the county can apply for the grant instead. One department in the county, so it's one per county / and or solid waste management district.
Okay. In the next box, we have the grant data that we're asking about. So we'd like to know, what is your anticipated number of tires that you're thinking that you will be collecting? And what's your total projected project cost? And the amount you're requesting. Now, as the email information that went out stated, that we are looking at grants in the amount of $10,000 right now. So the max that you need to put down there is $10,000. Then in the next box, we have information that we're asking for in regards to, will your organization self-process the tires? Or will you self-transport the tires? In other words, will the solid waste management district do that? But if you are going to hire someone, we do ask that you check the box underneath the processor and the transporter would be, and their registration number that they have. So where it says waste tire processor number, waste tire transporter number. So if you would please actually put their number that they have, that they are registered with the state of Indiana to actually perform those operations. And we do have a list of registered waste tire processors, transporters, and storage sites, and we'll drop that into the chat for you. And then the next thing is we just ask that you put your signature down there, the date. And that's pretty much it for the application. We tried to make it short, simple, sweet. Does anyone have any questions right now, specifically in regards to the waste tire? I'm sorry. Let's click back over to the second page. I'm sorry. So in that first area, the first box, we ask that you provide a brief summary of the project. So if you plan on having one big waste tire amnesty day, that you have everybody to bring in tires, just list that. That's what you plan on doing. Or if you plan on having a couple days, then you would list that information down that you're going to have a couple days. Or if you're just going to have people to drop it off over a period of time, just give us a brief explanation as to how you're planning on actually using this waste tire grant. And then in the second box, we just like to know, what is the need or the motivation behind your project? Just anything, just insight into what's going on in your county. And then the next box, number 3, we're asking, how will the outcomes and the effectiveness of the project be measured? Are you going to say, by the number of tires that you removed, or just whatever it is that you feel that however you're going to measure and say that it was a successful project? And number 4, we're just asking, what will be the method for evaluating? And if your project needs to be modified for some reason, or whatever it is that you had originally planned of how you were going to carry out your waste tire amnesty day. If something comes up and needs to be modified, if you could just give us that information, you know, what happened, what you're planning on doing if you're going to have to modify it. Okay, so now we will go to any questions that we have in the chat.
Okay, the first question that we have in the chat is, what if you plan to have multiple project locations? How should that be reflected in the application?
You can just easily list that information down on the application that is what you plan to do. And please list the specific addresses of those specific locations and the dates.
And if there's not enough space on the actual application, feel free to attach additional pages with that information. The second question is, what if your tire processor measures by the truckload or volume, not individual tires? How would you like that reported? You can choose the method by which you want to report this. You can do it in tons, you can do it in individual tires, just as long as you have documentation showing that you spent the money on this grant for purposes of cleaning up waste tires. The next question is, if a solid waste management district is multi-county, are they able to apply for $10,000 per county? Southeastern Indiana Recycling District, as an example, is a district that covers 7 Indiana counties. So unfortunately, at this time, that was not something that we had anticipated for this particular grant cycle. It is something that we can definitely look into for next year, because hopefully this will be an ongoing grant system. At an amount of $10,000, we have enough grant funding for 30 applicants to get awarded a grant. So I'm not sure that we could do $10,000 per every county in Indiana at this point in time. The next question is, when is the deadline to have the project completed? So we will be awarding the grant hopefully sometime in February, early March. And the funds will need to be spent by the end of calendar year 2024. This grant is not an in-kind or anything like that. It is a grant where you spend the money and then provide documentation, and we will reimburse you for those funds spent up to that $10,000 mark. Okay. The next question is, so we can modify the project number 4 and not have to go through item to do that. If you are deviating from the original plan, you would need to at least email us and let us know the details. So you would just send in like an addendum to your application to that same email address on the grant application, waste tire grants at idem.in.gov. But as long as the funding is going for cleaning up waste tires, it should be acceptable. The next one is, my multi-county district maintains an ongoing waste tire collection program and charges a minimal fee per tire, depending upon size. Is the grant only for tire amnesty programs? No, it is for any tire cleanup program in your county. I think when we initially started this, we had envisioned it possibly as focusing on tire amnesty programs, but and so that might be why I say tire amnesty a little too often, but no, it is for any tire cleanup in your county up to that dollar amount that the grant will be awarded for. So as long as the money is going to be spent for waste tire cleanup, that is what we're looking for. Can solid waste management districts partner with local tire stores on this, or do we need to use one of the tire recyclers on the item list? So you can partner with local tire stores. However, that does not mean that they can necessarily do all of the things that would need to have happen. So if you're cutting up those tires and hiring somebody to cut up those tires, that person would need to be a registered waste tire processor or have a solid waste processing facility permit, because that is a higher level permit than waste tire registration. You could have county personnel cut up those tires, but if you're hiring somebody else to do it outside of the solid waste management district, that person does need to be registered. And that is all the questions we currently have for this form. So I will stop sharing this form and I will open up our next form. And I do want to answer one question that we got last time, which was, can any of this money be used for advertising purposes for the project? And a limited amount of money could be used for promotional purposes. That's going to be capped at $500. The next form that I'm going to pull up is State Form 57242, which is the waste grant, tire grant expenditure form. Sorry, my computer's a little slow. It's taking a second. There we go. Let me share my screen once more, and Janet will walk us through this next form.
So again, in the right-hand corner, I just want to point out, because we've been asked several times about the email address, where does it go to? In the upper right-hand corner, you have our information regarding the waste tire grant email that you will send your expenditure report to. So at the top in section 1 of State Form 57242, in that grant information, we're just asking for the name of the grantee. That is the entity in which, or the name that we will be issuing the grant. And that grant amount, again, is for that $10,000. We need to know your contract number and your grant start date and your end date. So if you're doing one date, that date will be the same. If you're doing it over a period of days, it will be when you start and when you end. In section 2 for the budget category expenditures, we've got information that we're asking for regarding the invoice dates, the vendors, the description of the expense, whether that would be for, if you decide to use some of that for the advertising, for the processing, or for the transporting of it. And we do list the check number down there. We're asking for that check number, the total expense amount, the grant amount. The question came up, it says, okay, what if we're using a credit card? Just please put in the description of the expense, you know, that you used a credit card, that information. And of course, you're going to be attaching information regarding your documentation. So this form that we have is a form that we are wanting to use for just the general purposes for the expenses. So that's the reason why we have the other categories that are listed there for cash match amount and for in-kind amount, which doesn't really necessarily apply in this situation. And this form is very, very simple. That is all that we have down there. And then we just ask for your signature and the date.
Okay, and let's check out questions we have concerning this. We have a question about, originally mentioned on the email, the grants awarded would be around February 1st. Is this webinar you mentioned now around March 1st? What should we expect? We anticipate having them issued about 30 days after the grant period closes. So that should be around February 11th. but it might be a little sooner and it might be a little after. It depends on how quickly we can get through all of the applications that we receive. But we do intend to at least announce the award recipients around 30 days afterwards, but there might be some additional paperwork before the grant is fully awarded, where you'll have to provide some other additional information potentially. This is our first year doing this, so we wanted to build in a little cushion. So it should be, they should be awarded by first quarter of 2024. The next question we have is, if a solid waste management district is not the entity in their county that collects and deals with waste tires, can they apply working with the entity in their county who normally works on waste tires, pass-through grant? Absolutely, you can work with anyone in your county as long as these funds are going for tire cleanup. So if you want to partner with your local Tox Drop people, if that's not you, or if you want to partner with your health department, any of that is acceptable. You just need to apply for the grant and then put all the information about what you're doing in that grant application form. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions currently, so I will stop sharing this form and I will open up our last form, which is the form that talks about the final report. The form again.
57240.
So Janet is going to start talking about the Waste Tire Grant Program final report.
Okay, so again, I will say the broken record. Our contact mailing information is up in that upper right-hand corner, and the email address is in that upper right-hand corner.
One second, Janet, I'm having technical difficulties. There we go.
Okay. So in that first section of section 1, we're asking for the date that you're filling this out. We're asking for that contract number that you will be issued for your grant, the name of the grantee. You can please handwrite in the name of the person that's completing the report, their title, and then also sign it in that box underneath. So in the second section, we're just asking that you give us some feedback in regards to your project. Summarize the major activities that were performed during this reporting period. You know, you processed tires, you advertised, or whatever you may have done. We're just asking if you could just summarize and give us some information regarding that. And if you had additional activities and developments that arose as the project progressed, then going back to initially in your application, you have your planned activities, but not everything goes the way we plan. So we're just asking that you could give us information regarding anything that may have came up and how you handled those activities. And then number 2, we're asking, were the original objectives of the project that you had planned, were they actually met? If there are any deviations from when you originally submitted your application that came up that you needed to implement, if you could just give us brief information about what actually occurred and what you had to do for the deviation. Then in that number box 3, that's where we're asking for the amount of tires that actually end up being properly disposed of as a result of your project. You can have that in pounds, tons, however you guys need to report that, just so that we can get an idea of how many tires were actually properly processed and disposed of. And if you could also indicate whether participation in this project increased as a result of the project to date. So if, for example, you guys normally have a certain amount that you would normally dispose of for the waste tires, but because you had this grant, you had a lot of people that decided that they want to participate and come and properly dispose of their tires. So if there was increased participation in that, we would like to know that. And number 4, if there were any additional permits or registration that needed to be obtained, arising since you had submitted your application, if you could submit that information to us, indicate if the entity is currently in compliance and with all their permitting requirements for the project. And number 5 is where we just asked for your general feedback on how did you think things went. If you can give us information on how to improve this program, because as we said, this is our first time doing this. So any suggestions that you guys feel that would be very helpful and to improve the process to make it a little bit more simpler for everybody and help things go smoothly, we are open to that feedback and we greatly appreciate that. So that is all we have for that form.
Okay, that brings us up to the questions we have. The question we have now is, we transport our tires to a facility in Michigan. Do we need their processor number, or do we need to use a facility in Indiana? You are not required to use a facility that's based in Indiana. However, anybody who is transporting tires in Indiana would need to have an Indiana waste tire registration number. If your solid waste management district is self-transporting them to the location in Michigan, you would not need to be registered. Okay, that is all the questions we currently have. Do we have any other additional questions that anybody needs answers to? Does our tire vendor need to supply their actual permits to us? They don't have to supply their actual permits to you, but you should check to see if they're on that registered list. You could always reach out to Waste Tire Grants at idem.in.gov with any questions you may have about whether or not somebody is registered, if you want to do so. So that list is in the chat. But if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask us any questions you may have. Can multiple counties work together and apply together? You can. This is primarily for solid waste management districts. So if a couple of you wanted to go together to do a multi-county event, that would be acceptable. Just put both of you would need to apply and put that in your details. Are there any types of projects that you might reject? This is our first year. We have not, I don't know, we have anything in the works that I think we would reject. As long as the project is going for cleaning up tires, that is our goal. So if you want to do an actual tire cleanup where you have an open dump in your county and you want to get that remediated, that is acceptable. If you want to put on a waste tire amnesty day, that is acceptable. If you normally have to charge a fee to people to dispose of waste tires and you want to offset some of that fee that you have to charge your residents, that would be acceptable. So we're open to a wide variety of projects, just to anything that would prevent tires from being dumped in your county and or that would get the tires cleaned up. If you wanted to take your tires to somebody who is doing a processing site that is, turning those tires into another item like tire dry fuel or something like that. That's all acceptable, and it's all okay. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would be unacceptable, provided that our end goal of getting tires cleaned up in the county is met. That being said, there may be something, but if we get something that we think we'll have to reject, we'll try and reach out and let you know so that you can amend your request if possible. Okay, so those are the last questions that we have. Oh, here's another one. If two counties work together, can they both ask for $10,000, circling back to the solid waste management district that is multi-county? So if your county belongs to a solid waste management district, it really needs to go through the solid waste management district. We have currently designed this grant program to function through the solid waste management district, but we are making allowances for counties that do not belong to a solid waste management district. For example, Marion County doesn't have a solid waste management district. So somebody from Marion County, county government could apply in lieu of a solid waste management district because they do not have one. If you are part of a solid waste management district, it will be one per solid waste management district. But that is something we will look into for next year to see if there are other ways to do this to account for the fact that some solid waste management districts handle more than one county. I do want to also point out that these grants are for up to $10,000. You are allowed to request a lower amount if you don't feel that you can use the entire $10,000. So if you feel $5,000 is sufficient for your county or your solid waste management district, you could apply for $5,000. We are capped at a $300,000 limit for this year. So once we've handed out $300,000 grant funding in the amount of $300,000 or awarded that, we will not be able to award any more, even if you would otherwise meet the criteria. We are working on a first come, first serve basis this year. But again, as Janet said, this is our first year doing this, and we will welcome all feedback in the final report or via our email address at wastetirogrants@idem.in.gov. So yes, our current plan is first come, first serve. We hope we'll be able to accommodate every applicant that we receive. Unfortunately, if every solid waste management district in the state applies, we will hit out before we reach. We would not have enough funding in our grant pool to accommodate every solid waste management district in the state. So the priority will be given to those who apply first. But again, that's something that we are looking at for future grant rounds. So the entry date is December 11th, and it goes until February 15th, I believe. I'm not sorry, February 15th is incorrect. January 15th. Are there any additional questions? January 15th is the latest that you can apply. The grant period opens on December 11th. So I think that is next Monday. Next Monday. Yes, the solid waste management district gets priority over a county. So this grant, unless that county does not belong to a solid waste management district. So If your solid waste management district applies and Marion County applies that doesn't have a solid waste management district, those would be weighted equally. But if a county applies that isn't a solid waste management district, the solid waste management, or that is part of a solid waste management district, you would get priority over the county. Are there any additional questions? And if you think of any, you are more than welcome to email us at wastehirgrants@idem.in.gov, and we will try to answer them as quickly as we possibly can. We do appreciate all of your guys' time. And we do acknowledge that this is our first year, so there will be a few bumps and hiccups, and I'm sure there'll be improvements going forward. And we really do want your guys' suggestion and feedback to make this the best grant program that it can be. If we don't have any additional questions, then we will close this out. And we will get that recording of this session posted. And if you need the link and you cannot find it, please do email wastehirgrants@idem.in.gov and we will send you out the link. Thank you.